Yeah, we just came out here one day and just decided to start painting. We had our diagonals working for us. That was pretty much the main thing. And this tree, we actually had to bring it in. I was holding it up in the picture while I painted it. Don't ask me how we did it. It was a tough thing. I'm actually holding it up right now as we speak. So we just wanted to give the viewers at home a little feel of what it was like for us. So we kind of worked with our light and dark contrast as well, and our main focus was to have the light on the cabin in the background. So that was pretty much how it went down.
Did you have any influences like Hogarth or Rembrandt?
Yeah, both, pretty much.
Back to you guys. Thanks, Ian. Now we're back in the studio with Michael Sandiego, who recently got back from a trip to Scotland. He's going to tell us all about that trip, and also he's prepared a song for us. Michael?
Thanks, Ian. I recently visited Scotland to prepare for my upcoming album release. I thought it would be interesting to have an album based off of the location as compared to just, my emotions as usual. So I picked Scotland because it's supposed to be very ideal and it's a very beautiful landscape. As I experienced, I'm going to tell you about some of the beauty that I experienced there. But first, a little promo for my little album shout out. My album is going to be dropped on June the 2nd. It's called Scotland on My Mind. It's got 2 hit singles. One of them, Your Smile Makes Me Smile, and African Americans in Glasgow. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over some significant places in Scotland that I found to be interesting, and we should also have some pictures mixed in with these. And then after I discuss the places, I'll play a little song for you guys.
That sounds great. So you're just going to talk about some of the landscapes and other landmarks that you saw while you were over in Scotland?
That is exactly what I'm going to do. The first place I want to talk to you about is the Falkirk Wheel, which is a rotating boat lift in Scotland. And essentially what it does is a boat goes into one of its little lift things, and it lifts it up out of the water and moves it over and transfers it into a different canal. It's named after the nearby town of Falkirk, and it connects the Forth and Clyde canals with the Union Canal. Previously, it was connected by a series of 11 locks, but in the 30s, these had sort of fallen into disrepair, so the locks were filled in and the land was built up. The main architect of the project was Tony Kettle, who at the time was the design principal of Edinburgh. And he worked out this idea of keeping these 2 arms staying upright while rotating, and the original model they built for this was used with his daughter's Legos. It has a diameter of 35 meters and consists of 2 opposing arms which extend up into the air, and actually it looks like a double-headed axe. It's inspired by ancient Celtic axes. So it's almost sort of like Gimli, son of Gloin, built a little rotating boat lift thing in the middle of Scotland, which I think is pretty nifty.
So Michael, of course, since you went to Scotland, a lot of our videos viewers are going to be wondering, did you get to go to Loch Ness?
Actually, that was the next thing that I was going to discuss with you guys, is some of the lochs in Scotland. And there's 2 primary ones which I want to talk about, which are Loch Ness and Loch Lomond. Loch Ness is a large loch in the Highlands of Scotland. It's close to the town of Inverness. It is, of course, most famously known for sightings of the Loch Ness Monster. But actually, its water visibility is extremely low due to a very high peat content in the soil. So it seems to me like it's incredibly likely that people just spotted strange little shadows in the loch and started thinking, hey, maybe that's a monster. Because, people back in the days were kind of superstitious. So I think maybe that's how the legend of the Loch Ness Monster started. And then the well-known picture of that weird little tentacle thing sticking out of the water got seen, and everyone became a craze.
Then the reason why you think that Nessie is, superstition and stuff, which is, probably true, is because basically the soil made the water so dark that, you couldn't see anything anyway, so the shadows just seemed like they were kind of like playing around and forming these weird shapes, and people just took a hold of that and ran off with it.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Like, at one point, I actually thought I saw a octopus, but it turned out to be a bunch of seaweed. So, our senses fail us a lot of the times. Some more information about Loch Ness is actually the second largest Scottish loch by surface area. Loch Lomond, which I'm about to talk to, is the largest, but is the largest by volume. Its deepest point is 230 meters, and it has more fresh water than all the lakes in England and Wales combined.
Really interesting, Michael.
And the other loch which I visited was Loch Lomond, which is the largest inland stretch of water in Great Britain by surface area, as I told you earlier. And it also contains many islands, one of which is Inchmurren, which is the largest freshwater island in the British Isles. And it's well known for many reasons, and there's actually a song written about it called The Bonnie Banks of Loch Lomond, and I did a death metal hardcore gangster rap fusion about that song. Like, I covered it and fused those two genres. One of my favorite places that I visited while I was in Scotland was the Orkney Islands, which is an archipelago in Scotland, archipelago in northern Scotland, and it is made up of 70 islands, approximately 20 of which are inhabited. The largest island, which is known as the mainland, has an area of 523.25 square kilometers, which is 202 square miles, which makes it the 6th largest island in Scotland and the 10th largest island in the British Isles. The Orkney Islands were actually one of my favorite locations that I visited in Scotland. I thought it was one of the most picturesque and beautiful, and I think there should be some pictures of it being shown right now. But my favorite landmark in the Orkney Islands was the Old Man of Hoy, which is a 449-foot sea stack, which is off the island Hoy. The Old Man of Hoy is a red sandstone stack. It's like this giant towering monolith emerging from the ocean, and it's perched on a plinth of basalt rock off of Hoy, as I said, and is actually less than 400 years old. Is simply there because somehow this gap between the Old Man of Hoy and the actual regular island eroded, and it's thought that eventually it will actually erode away because the ocean will just break it down and eventually just fall into the sea and disappear. Munros are mountains in Scotland that have a height of over 3,000 feet. They're called Munros after Sir Hugh Munro, who produced the first list of hills like this, and they were called Munro's Tables. And a Munro Top is a summit that's not regarded as a separate mountain. The best known of these mountains is Ben Nevis, which I'm going to be talking about soon. And the Munros of Scotland present challenging conditions for hikers, especially in winter. Each year, people actually die on the mountains when they go hiking. But despite all of the deaths, a popular practice is to do Munro bagging, the goal of which is to climb all of the listed Munros. As of 2009, more than 4,000 had reported completing their round of Munro bagging. The holder of the record for the fastest continuous round is Stephen Pike, who completed his round in 2010 in just under 40 days. Considering that there are 282 Munros and 227 subsidiary tops, and a Munro Top is a summit that's not regarded as a separate mountain, but is over 3,000 feet, and there's 228, so there's upwards of 500 of these, and this guy climbed all of them in under 40 days.
That's incredible. So you said it was Munro bagging?
Yes.
It's a popular practice over there. Is this similar in any way to like backpacking that someone might do in the United States or in Europe or something like that?
You could compare it to that, but I think in a lot of ways this is more of a localized, traditional thing, and it's a little bit more extreme than just typical backpacking. Because typical backpacking is just, I'm going to walk from here to here and see some stuff.
Yeah, the conditions that you describe are a lot more harsh than what typical backpackers would experience.
Yep. So now I want to talk about Ben Nevis, which I mentioned earlier briefly, and is the highest mountain in the British Isles. It is 1,344 feet above sea level, and is located on the western ends of the Grampian Mountains in the Scottish Highlands. The mountain is one of the most popular tourist destinations in the area. It has approximately 100,000 people climb it a year, the majority of which use the pony path from Glen Nevis. The pony path or pony track, there's many names for it, is one of the simplest and most popular routes of ascent. It begins at Achintee on the east side of Glen Nevis, and it climbs steeply to the saddle by Lochen, Mial, and Tiswede, known as the Halfway Lake, at 570 meters, and ascends the remaining 700 meters up the stony west flank of Ben Nevis in a series of zigzags. It's supposedly very well made and maintained throughout its length, but the loose scree on the path's upper reaches can be very dangerous. So it's not extremely steep due to the zigzags, but an experienced walker should be aware that the ascent can be very tiring. The summit of Ben Nevis is actually the collapsed dome of an ancient volcano.
Okay, now a word from our sponsors.
I love you. Always have. I want you to marry me. In a land of timeless beauty, William Wallace was a man of peace. I came back home to raise crops and, God willing, a family. Edward Longshanks is the most ruthless king to ever sit on the throne of England. If we win, we'll have what none of us have ever had before, a country of our own.
Now we're back from the commercial break for the continuing segment with Michael about his trip to Scotland. Michael?
Before I tell you guys any more about Scotland, I would like to talk to you about Bluebell Ice Cream, which is one of the sponsors for my album. It is quite delicious, and you should all buy it. Next, I want to talk to you guys about some glens in Scotland. The first one that I want to talk to you about is called Glencoe, and located near the village of Glencoe, and it's the name Glencoe is said to mean the Glen of Weeping, and it's supposed to reference the massacre of Glencoe, which occurred in 1692. Glen Affric, which is a glen that is southwest of the village of Canich in the Highland region of Scotland, and it's about 15 miles to the west of Loch Ness, and the River Affric runs along its length and it passes through Loch Affric, and this is probably where it got its name from. And the area is a Caledonian forest reserve. And Caledonian forests are a type of woodland that used to cover a large area of Scotland, but currently only 1% of the original forest survives. It covers 180 square kilometers. The forests have a wide variety of wildlife which are not found in any other location of the British Isles. They were formed in the last ice age, where trees began to regrow over the British Isles, over Land Bridge, which used to be over the English Canal but is currently submerged. And they were found all over the Isles of Great Britain until the climate change occurred, and now the only area which can support them is the Scottish Highlands. And Len Affric is actually thought to be one of the most beautiful locations in Scotland, and is host to many creatures. For instance, while there I saw some water voles, which are delightful little animals that are quite common in Scotland. The next place that I visited is this old cathedral. It's called St. Andrew's Cathedral. It's this, traditional old school cathedral design. It's got the towers, the arches, just traditional things that you would expect. It's a ruined Roman cathedral, Roman Catholic cathedral in St. Andrews of Scotland. It was built in 1158 and became the center of the medieval church in Scotland. And it fell into ruin during the 16th century Scottish Reformation, when Protestants sort of started coming back into power and Protestantism became more popular. And after the Scottish Reformation, Catholic Mass was outlawed, and the ruins indicate that the building used to be about 391 feet long. It was the largest church ever to have built in Scotland. And it was supposed to supply a greater accommodation than the old church that used to be there, St. Regulus. Today, all that remains is the tower, St. Rule's Tower, and the choir. In 1559, during the Reformation, the building was stripped of all of its altars and images, and by 1561, it had just been abandoned and left to ruin. And St. Rule's Tower is located on the grounds of the cathedral, but it's actually predates it. It's a lot older than cathedral was. It was built in grey sandstone ashlar, and is, for the time period which it was built in, is extremely tall. Most buildings in that time period didn't reach anything near that height. And it's a landmark, land and sea mark from miles away. And its prominence was probably meant to, guide pilgrims to that location. And its prominence was probably meant to guide pilgrims to that location so that they could, see the relics of the apostles and worship there. One of the more interesting sites that I visited were the Callanish Stones, which are on the west coast of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides, which are the Western Isles of Scotland. Construction of the site took place between 2900 and 2600 BC, although it was thought that there were possibly buildings that were built there before 3000 BC. And later, after that date, a tomb was built on the site, and debris from that tomb suggests it was out of use from about 2000 BC to 1700 BC. And the 13 primary stones of the Callanish Stones form a circle which is approximately 13 meters in diameter, and has a long approach avenue of stones to the north and shorter stones to the east, south, and west, so that the layout of the monument somewhat resembles a Celtic cross. The individual stones vary from about 1 meter to 5 meters in height. They're on average 4 meters. They are made out of Louisian gneiss. The tallest one marks the entrance to a burial cairn where human remains have been discovered. Pottery finds suggest a date of 2200 BC for the erection of the circle, and it's been speculated that the stones form a calendar system that's based off of the moon. And Professor Alexander Thom suggested that the alignment of the stone avenue, when you're looking southward, points to the setting of the midsummer full moon behind a mountain that's called Collisham. So that's why he thinks that the stones were built, but there are other theories, like a local tradition says that giants who used to live on that island refused to be converted to Christianity by St. Kieran, and so they were turned into stone as a punishment. Another more modern usage of the stones is in the Pixar film Brave, which you may have seen, where they were used as a set piece, essentially. If you remember a circle of stones from Brave, that was the Kallanish stones.
So that's the location in the movie where those will-o'-the-wisps that you followed were coming out of?
Yes. It's also the location in the movie where her mother stopped being a bear. Fun facts. So, on to, the next location. The place where I next visited was the Shetland Islands, which is a subarctic archipelago of Scotland. It lies northeast of mainland Britain. They're about 80 kilometers to the northeast of the Orkney Isles that I discussed earlier. What the Shetland Islands are probably most famous for is all of the indigenous breeds which come from there. Like there's the Shetland cattle, the Shetland goose, and the Shetland sheep, but probably the most commonly known ones are the Shetland sheepdog, or a Sheltie, and the Shetland pony, the little miniature ponies. There also used to be a breed of domesticated pig called Grice, and those became extinct in 1930. The last place which I visited, and is probably my favorite in Scotland, is Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, which is found in the Highlands of Scotland. It was really interesting. I got to see a lot of people riding around on broomsticks. I did lose like 3 of my crew members to hippogriffs, but no big loss. Overall, it was a really magical experience, but the only real downside was there was this weird guy just running all over the place, and he didn't have a nose.
Michael Jackson?
I don't know, maybe. But anyway, that's all I have to share with you guys about my trip to Scotland.
Well, thanks for being with us here today, Michael. Your trip to Scotland sounds really fun and interesting. I understand that you actually are prepared to play one of your songs from your new album that you talked about earlier today for us.
Yep. This song is called Scotland on My Mind, and is the title track off of my new album. And hopefully you guys like it. To Scotland we'll go, through every glen, down every road. To Scotland we'll go, nasty slumbering below. To Scotland we'll go, better watch out for bosses ghosts, 'cause it's hiding in the trees. Freedom! To Scotland we'll go, we're gonna learn about some art. To Scotland we'll go, maybe even talk about Hogarth. To Scotland we'll go. It's like a world apart. There's actually a tree on this green. On the flight over, I watch movies to pass the time, but Scotland's still on my mind. And that's it.